The summer sun beat down on Route 47 as Sarah Mitchell pulled her pickup truck into the gravel lot of her late father's motorcycle shop. The faded sign still read Mitchell's Custom Cycles, though the paint had started peeling around the edges. She'd been back in Copper Falls, Montana for exactly 3 weeks, and every single day felt like a battle. Sarah was 32 years old, a decorated Army mechanic who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan. She'd kept Humvees running through sandstorms, repaired helicopter engines under enemy fire, and earned the respect of every soldier in her unit. But here in her hometown, all anyone seemed to see was Danny Mitchell's little girl trying to play mechanic. She stepped out of the truck, her combat boots crunching on the gravel. Her father had passed away 6 months ago, leaving her the shop and a reputation she was struggling to live up to. Danny Mitchell had been a legend in these parts. He could fix anything with 2 wheels, and the local motorcycle club, the Iron Riders, had trusted him with their prized Harleys for over 30 years. Now those same men looked at Sarah like she was pretending to be something she wasn't. The bell above the shop door chimed as she entered. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal filled her nose, bringing back memories of childhood afternoons spent handing her father tools and learning the language of engines. She'd loved those days. Back then, nobody questioned whether she belonged here. She walked to the workbench where a 1947 Harley-Davidson knucklehead sat waiting. The bike belonged to Tom Garrett, president of the Iron Riders. He'd brought it in 2 weeks ago with a challenge in his eyes. "Your old man promised he'd get her running before he passed," Tom had said, his arms crossed over his leather vest. "Said he had a special plan for her. You think you can finish what he started?" Sarah had examined the bike carefully. It was beautiful, all chrome and steel, but it hadn't run in 15 years. Her father's notes were scattered across the workbench, covered in his cramped handwriting. She'd spent days trying to decode his plans, and what she'd found seemed impossible. Her father had been working on something revolutionary. According to his notes, he designed a system that would allow the Harley to run partially on water, not as the primary fuel, but as a supplement that would increase efficiency and reduce emissions. The science was solid, based on hydrogen extraction, but it was decades ahead of its time. The shop door swung open and 3 men walked in. Tom Garrett led the way, flanked by his right-hand man, Rick Porter, and a younger rider named Jake Stevens. All 3 wore the Iron Riders' colors, their leather vests decorated with patches and pins. "Morning, Sarah," Tom said, though his tone wasn't exactly friendly. "Came to check on my bike." Sarah wiped her hands on a rag and stood up straight. In the Army, she'd learned never to show weakness, never to back down. "It's coming along. Your father's design is complex." Rick snorted. "Danny's design, not yours." "I'm following his blueprints," Sarah said evenly. "It's going to work." Jake leaned against the doorframe, a smirk on his face. "You know, my cousin's shop over in Billings could probably have this done in a week. Just saying." Tom held up a hand. "Danny was my friend. I'm giving his daughter a chance." He walked over to the Harley, running his hand along the fuel tank. "But I gotta be honest, Sarah. The boys are getting antsy. We've got our annual rally in 3 weeks. I was hopping to debut this bike there, if you can't get it done." "I'll get it done," Sarah said firmly. "Right." Tom didn't sound convinced. "Thing is, Danny told me this bike was going to be special. Said it would run on something nobody expected. You figure out what he meant by that." Sarah hesitated. Her father's water hybrid system was still theoretical. She'd built the components according to his plans, but she hadn't tested them yet. If she told these men what she was attempting and it failed, she'd be laughed out of town. "I'm working on it," she said. Rick stepped forward, his face hard. "You know what I think? I think you're in over your head. I think you're stalling because you don't know what you're doing. Danny was a genius. You're just a girl who learned to change oil filters in the Army." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She'd heard worse in the military, had faced down men who thought women had no place in a motor pool. She'd proven them wrong every single time. "I served 8 years as a combat mechanic," Sarah said, her voice calm but cold. "I've rebuilt engines in 100-degree heat while mortars fell around me. I've kept vehicles running that everyone else gave up on. So no, Rick, I'm not just a girl who learned to change oil filters." Tom stepped between them. "All right, that's enough. Sarah, you've got 2 more weeks. If the bike's not running by then, I'm taking it to Billings. Fair?" It wasn't fair, not really. Her father would have been given all the time he needed, but Sarah nodded. 2 weeks, the bike will run." The 3 men left and Sarah stood alone in the shop, staring at the Harley. Her hands were shaking, not from fear but from anger. She'd proven herself 1,000 times over, and yet here she was, still fighting for basic respect. She picked up her father's journal and flipped through the pages. His handwriting was like a puzzle, full of sketches and calculations. On the last page, he'd written something that caught her eye. "Sarah will understand. She's got the mind for it and the heart. Don't let them tell you it can't be done, kiddo. The impossible just takes a little longer." Tears stung her eyes. Her father had believed in her, had known she could finish his work. She wouldn't let him down, and she wouldn't let these men dismiss her. Over the next week, Sarah barely slept. She worked 16-hour days, carefully installing the water hybrid system her father had designed. The concept was elegant. A small electrolysis unit would split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen, feeding the hydrogen into the engine alongside the regular fuel. It would increase power while reducing fuel consumption. But elegant didn't mean easy. Every connection had to be perfect, every seal airtight. One mistake and the whole system could fail or, worse, explode. On the 8th day, as she was calibrating the electrolysis unit, the shop door opened. She looked up to see a woman about her age, with kind eyes and a friendly smile. "Sarah Mitchell?" the woman asked. "That's me. I'm Emma Chen. I own the diner down the street. I knew your father." She held up a paper bag. "Brought you lunch. Figured you could use a break." Sarah realized she hadn't eaten since yesterday. "That's really kind of you. Thank you." Emma set the bag on a clean section of workbench. "I've been watching those iron riders come and go. They're not making this easy on you, are they?" Sarah shrugged. "I've faced worse." "I heard about your service. Thank you for that." Emma glanced at the Harley. "Your dad used to talk about you all the time. He was so proud. Said you were the best mechanic he'd ever seen, and he didn't care what anyone else thought." "He said that all the time, especially after you enlisted. He'd show everyone pictures of you working on helicopters and trucks. He knew you were going to do great things." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I wish he'd told me that more often. He was a man of few words, your dad, but he loved you more than anything." Emma headed toward the door, then paused. "Don't let those old bikers get you down. Most of them are good men, but they're stuck in their ways. Show them what you can do. Make them see what your father saw." After Emma left, Sarah ate the sandwich and felt renewed energy. She wasn't doing this for Tom Garrett or the Iron Riders. She was doing it for her father and for herself. 3 days before the deadline, Sarah finished the installation. Every wire was connected, every hose secured, every valve calibrated. The water tank was filled, the fuel tank was filled, and the battery was charged. It was time to test it. She sat on the Harley, her heart pounding. This was the moment of truth. If her father's design worked, it would be revolutionary. If it failed, she'd be the laughingstock of Copper Falls. Sarah turned the key and pressed the start button. Nothing happened. She tried again. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. She checked the connections, adjusted the fuel mixture, and tried a third time. Still nothing. Frustration washed over her. She'd followed her father's plans exactly. What was she missing? She climbed off the bike and grabbed the journal again, reading through every page. Then she saw it. a small note in the margin that she'd overlooked. Initial start requires manual hydrogen boost. Prime the system first. There was a small hand pump attached to the water tank. Sarah worked it 20 times, building pressure in the electrolysis chamber. Then she climbed back on the Harley and turned the key. This time, when she pressed the start button, the engine roared to life. The sound was perfect, deep and powerful. The Harley rumbled beneath her, running smoother than any bike she'd ever heard. And according to the gauges she'd installed, the water hybrid system was working exactly as designed. Sarah sat there, listening to the engine, and smiled. She'd done it. Her father's impossible dream was real. The next morning, Sarah opened the shop early. She'd spent half the night running the Harley, testing the water hybrid system under different conditions. Everything worked perfectly. The bike ran smoother than any conventional Harley, and the fuel efficiency was remarkable. Her father had been a genius, and she'd brought his vision to life. She was adjusting the idle speed when Tom Garrett's pickup truck pulled into the lot. He wasn't alone. At least a dozen iron riders followed on their motorcycles, forming a semicircle in front of the shop. The rumble of their engines filled the morning air. Sarah walked outside, wiping her hands. Tom climbed out of his truck, Rick and Jake right behind him. "Heard you wanted to see us," Tom said. "Emma from the diner said you had something to show us." Sarah hadn't asked Emma to spread the word, but she was grateful. This needed to be public. "The knucklehead is finished. She runs." Rick laughed out loud. "Right, and I'm the Easter Bunny." "I'm serious," Sarah said. "Come inside and see for yourself." The riders followed her into the shop, crowding around the Harley. In the morning light streaming through the windows, the restored bike gleamed. Sarah had spent hours polishing the chrome, and it looked like a piece of art. Tom approached slowly, running his hand over the fuel tank. "She's beautiful, I'll give you that. But does she run like Danny promised?" "Better," Sarah said. She pointed to the small water tank she'd installed near the rear wheel. "My father designed a revolutionary system. This bike runs on gasoline and water." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Rick started laughing, and several other riders joined in. "Water," Rick said between laughs. "You're telling us this Harley runs on water?" "Partially," Sarah explained, keeping her voice steady. "The system extracts hydrogen from water through electrolysis and feeds it into the engine alongside regular fuel. It increases efficiency and power while reducing emissions." Jake shook his head. "That's impossible. If that worked, everyone would be doing it." "My father figured it out," Sarah said, "and I built it according to his plans." Tom's expression was unreadable. "Sarah, I respected your father, but this sounds like science fiction. Water doesn't burn." "Hydrogen does," Sarah said. "And hydrogen comes from water, basic chemistry." Rick stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "You know what this is? This is desperation. You couldn't fix the bike the normal way, so you're making up fairy tales. You think we're stupid enough to believe this?" "I think you're smart enough to look at the evidence," Sarah shot back. "The bike runs, I can prove it." "Then prove it," Tom said quietly. "Start her up." Sarah climbed onto the Harley. Every eye in the shop was on her. She could feel the skepticism, the doubt, the certainty that she was about to fail. It was just like her first day in the Army motor pool, when the senior mechanics had given her an engine they said was unfixable, expecting her to quit. She'd fixed that engine in 4 hours. Sarah turned the key and pressed the start button. The knucklehead roared to life, the sound filling the shop like thunder. The engine purred, smooth and powerful, every cylinder firing perfectly. The laughter stopped. The riders stared, their expressions shifting from mockery to confusion. Sarah let the bike run for a full minute, then shut it down. The silence that followed was almost as loud as the engine had been. "Okay," Tom said slowly. "It runs. I'll admit I didn't think you could do it. But this water thing. Sarah, I need more than just a running engine. How do I know you didn't just fix it the regular way and add some fancy tank to make it look special? Sarah had anticipated this. She'd prepared for it. Fair question. Look at the fuel gauge. Tom leaned in. The gauge showed the tank was only a quarter full. That's about 2 gallons of gas, Sarah said. Now look at the hour meter I installed. The engine's been running for 6 hours total during my testing. Jake did the math in his head. No way. A knucklehead burns through gas way faster than that. You should have used at least 5 gallons. Exactly, Sarah said. The water hybrid system reduces fuel consumption by more than half, and that's not all. She pulled out a clipboard with her test data. The bike produces significantly less exhaust emissions, cleaner burn, better efficiency, more power. Rick snatched the clipboard from her hands, scanning the numbers. His expression darkened. This is fake. You made this up. I didn't, Sarah said firmly. And if you don't believe me, take the bike to a mechanic in Billings. Have them test it. The numbers will match. Tom studied her face for a long moment. You're serious about this? Completely serious. My father spent years developing this system. It works. One of the older riders, a man named Carl who'd been friends with her father, spoke up. Danny used to talk about something like this. Years ago, he said he was working on a way to make bikes run cleaner. Most of us thought he was just dreaming. He wasn't dreaming, Sarah said. He was inventing. Tom walked around the Harley slowly, examining the water tank and the connections. If this is real, Sarah, it's incredible, but it's also hard to believe. You understand that, right? I do, Sarah said. I know it sounds impossible, but impossible just takes a little longer. That's what my dad used to say. Rick slammed the clipboard down on the workbench. I call bull. This is a scam. She's trying to make herself look good by lying about what Danny did. I'm not lying, Sarah said, her voice rising. Everything I've told you is true. The bike runs on water and gas. My father designed it and I built it. If you can't handle that, it's your problem, not mine. Watch your mouth, Rick growled, stepping toward her. Tom put a hand on Rick's chest. That's enough. Sarah, I want to believe you, but Rick's got a point. This is a big claim. Before I show this bike at the rally and tell everyone it runs on water, I need to be absolutely sure. Then test it, Sarah said. Ride it, push it hard. Check the fuel consumption yourself. Tom considered this. All right, I'll take the bike for the weekend, put some real miles on her. If your numbers hold up, we'll talk. If they don't, he let the sentence hang. They will, Sarah said confidently. The riders filed out, their conversations buzzing with doubt and curiosity. Rick was the last to leave, and he stopped at the door. You're making a fool of yourself, he said to Sarah. And worse, you're making a fool of your father's memory. When this falls apart, everyone's going to remember that Danny Mitchell's daughter was a fraud. Sarah met his eyes without flinching. The only thing people are going to remember is that Danny Mitchell was a genius, and his daughter finished what he started. After they left, Sarah sat on the workbench, her hands shaking. She'd stood her ground, but the confrontation had taken its toll. The doubt in their eyes, the mockery in Rick's voice. It all reminded her of the worst days in the army, when she'd had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. Emma appeared in the doorway with a cup of coffee. I saw the crowd. How'd it go? Tom's taking the bike for the weekend. If it performs like I said it would, maybe they'll believe me. And if they don't? Sarah took the coffee gratefully. Then I'll have to find another way to prove it. Emma sat beside her. You know, your father had the same problem. When he first started talking about this water system, people laughed at him too, called him crazy. But he didn't care. He just kept working on it because he knew he was right. I wish he were here, Sarah said quietly. He'd know what to say to these guys. He'd tell you the same thing he told them. The proof is in the work. Actions speak louder than words. Emma smiled. And from what I saw, you've done the work. Now let the bike speak for you. That weekend felt like the longest of Sarah's life. She kept herself busy in the shop, working on other repairs, but her mind was always on the knucklehead. Was Tom really testing it? Were the numbers holding up? Or was he going to come back Monday morning and call her a liar? Sunday evening, she got her answer. Tom pulled into the shop lot just before closing time. He was riding the knucklehead, and behind him was a convoy of iron riders. Sarah's stomach tightened as she walked outside. Tom shut off the bike and climbed off slowly. His expression was unreadable. "Well?" Sarah asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Tom looked at the other riders, then back at her. "I put 200 miles on this bike since Friday. Took her up into the mountains, ran her hard, pushed her to the limit." Sarah waited, her heart pounding. "The fuel gauge barely moved," Tom said. "I couldn't believe it, so I had my buddy at the gas station measure the tank. Sarah, this bike used less than a gallon of gas for 200 miles. That's impossible." "But it's true," Sarah said. Tom nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's true. And the power. I've ridden a lot of Harleys in my life and I've never felt anything like this. She runs like a dream." Relief flooded through Sarah. "So you believe me?" "I believe the bike," Tom said. "I believe the numbers, and I believe your father was even more brilliant than I thought." He extended his hand. "You did good, Sarah, real good." Sarah shook his hand, feeling like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. But before she could celebrate, Rick pushed through the crowd of riders. "This doesn't prove anything," Rick said angrily. "So the bike gets good mileage. Maybe she just tuned the engine really well. That doesn't mean it runs on water." Tom turned to him. "Rick, I watched the water tank. The level went down as I rode. The system works." "Or there's a leak," Rick countered. "Or she rigged something. I'm telling you this is a con." "Why are you so determined to prove her wrong?" Carl asked. "What's your problem, Rick?" Rick's face flushed. "My problem is that we're about to make fools of ourselves. You want to go to the rally and tell everyone we've got a bike that runs on water. They'll laugh us out of the state. And when someone with a brain actually looks at this thing and proves it's fake, we'll be the joke of every motorcycle club in the country." "It's not fake," Sarah said, her voice hard. "I can explain exactly how the system works. I can show you the science. I can demonstrate it right now if you want." "I don't want your explanations," Rick spat. "I want you to admit that you're lying." "Rick, that's enough," Tom said sharply. "The bike performs exactly as Sarah said it would. That's all the proof I need." But Rick wasn't done. "You know what I think? I think Danny never designed this. I think Sarah built something in the army, maybe stole some military technology, and now she's pretending her dead father invented it to make herself look good." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Sarah felt her face burn with anger, but before she could respond, Carl stepped forward. "You're out of line, Rick," Carl said. "Way out of line." "Am I?" Rick challenged. "Think about it. Danny never showed anyone this system while he was alive, never proved it worked. Now suddenly his daughter shows up with a miracle bike. Come on." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "My father left detailed plans. I followed them exactly. If you're calling me a thief and a liar, you better have proof." "I've got common sense," Rick shot back. "And common sense says this whole thing stinks." Tom stepped between them. "Rick, you're done. Go home, cool off." "I'm not going anywhere until—" "I said go home." Tom's voice cracked like a whip. "That's an order, brother. Leave now." Rick glared at Sarah one more time, then stalked to his motorcycle and roared away. The other riders watched him go, the tension thick enough to cut. Tom turned to Sarah. "I'm sorry about that. Rick's had a chip on his shoulder since his own bike shop failed last year. He's jealous, and he's taking it out on you." "He accused me of stealing military technology," Sarah said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. "That's not just an insult. That's a serious accusation." "I know, and it's garbage. Everyone here knows it's garbage." Tom looked at the other riders who nodded in agreement. Your father was a genius and you've got his talent. This bike is proof of that. Carl approached Sarah. Your dad would be proud of you, kid. Don't let Rick's poison get in your head. Sarah took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. Thank you, that means a lot. Tom climbed back on the knucklehead. I'm going to ride this beauty at the rally in 2 weeks. I want you there beside me when I do. We're going to show the whole state what Danny Mitchell invented and what his daughter accomplished. You okay with that? Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she smiled through them. Yeah, I'm okay with that. As the riders departed, Sarah stood alone in the fading light, watching them go. She'd won this battle, but she had a feeling the war wasn't over. Rick's accusations were dangerous. If he kept spreading them, they could destroy her reputation and tarnish her father's legacy. The 2 weeks before the rally passed in a blur of work and worry. Sarah kept herself busy in the shop, taking on every repair job that came through the door. The word about the water hybrid Harley had spread through Copper Falls like wildfire, and people were divided. Some were excited, eager to see Danny Mitchell's final invention. Others were skeptical, repeating Rick's accusations that it was all a scam. Sarah tried to ignore the whispers, but they wore on her. She'd faced doubt before, but this felt different. This wasn't about her capabilities as a mechanic. This was about her integrity, her honesty, her father's legacy. Emma stopped by most days with food and encouragement. Don't let the gossips get to you, she'd say. Small towns love drama, but they also love being proven wrong. You show them that bike at the rally, and half of them will forget they ever doubted you. Sarah appreciated the support, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming. Rick had been too quiet since Tom shut him down. Men like Rick didn't just give up and walk away. 3 days before the rally, her worries proved justified. She was working late in the shop when she heard motorcycles outside. Not the rumble of Harleys, but the higher-pitched roar of sport bikes. Sarah walked to the window and saw 5 men in leather jackets parking in her lot. They weren't iron riders. Their vests bore the colors of the Devil's Creek Hounds, a rough motorcycle club from the next county over. Sarah's instincts, honed by years in combat zones, screamed danger. She locked the shop door and pulled out her phone, ready to call the police. One of the men knocked on the door. Sarah Mitchell, we want to talk. Shop's closed, Sarah called back. Come back tomorrow. This can't wait. Rick Porter sent us. Said you've got something special here and we want to see it. Sarah's blood ran cold. Rick had sent them. Whatever was about to happen, he'd orchestrated it. I'm not opening this door, Sarah said. Say whatever you need to say from out there, then leave. The man who'd knocked, a big guy with a scarred face, smiled unpleasantly. Rick says you're claiming to have a bike that runs on water. Says you're planning to embarrass the Iron Riders at the rally by showing off a fake invention. He thought we should know about it, seeing as how the Hounds have a history with the Riders. Sarah understood immediately. The Devil's Creek Hounds and the Iron Riders had been rivals for years. If Rick could convince the Hounds that Sarah was making fools of the Riders, he could turn this into a club conflict. The bike isn't fake, Sarah said. It's real and it works. Rick's lying to you. Then prove it, the scarred man said. Start it up. Show us this miracle machine. No, get off my property. The man's smile faded. See, that's what Rick said you'd do. Said you'd hide behind excuses because you know it's all a lie. Makes us wonder what else the Iron Riders are lying about. I don't care what Rick said. This is private property and you're trespassing. Leave now or I'm calling the sheriff. One of the other men kicked over a trash can. You hear that, boys? She's threatening us, not very friendly. Sarah dialed 911 on her phone, her thumb hovering over the call button. Last warning, leave. The scarred man held up his hands in mock surrender. All right, we're going. But you tell Tom Garrett something for us. Tell him the Hounds are going to be at that rally. And if he shows up with a fake bike and a bunch of lies, there's going to be trouble, real trouble. They climbed back on their sport bikes and roared away, leaving Sarah shaking in the locked shop. She didn't call the sheriff. She called Tom instead. He answered on the second ring. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She told him everything. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Rick's trying to start a war," Tom finally said, his voice tight with anger. "He sent the hounds to intimidate you and set them against us." "What do we do?" Sarah asked. "You stay safe, lock up the shop and go home. I'll handle Rick." "Tom, if the hounds show up at the rally looking for a fight?" "They won't. I'll talk to their president, clear this up. Rick's going to answer for this." But Sarah couldn't shake her worry. She'd seen what happened when rival groups clashed. In the military, she'd broken up fights between units that spiraled out of control. This had the same dangerous energy. The next morning, Tom showed up at her shop with Carl and 3 other senior Iron Riders. Tom looked like he hadn't slept. "We confronted Rick last night," Tom said. "He denied everything at first, but Carl got him to admit he talked to the hounds, said he was just warning them about a potential problem." "He's trying to sabotage the rally," Sarah said. "If the hounds cause trouble, it reflects badly on all of you, and the bike gets forgotten in the chaos." Tom nodded grimly. "Rick's out. As of last night, he's no longer an Iron Rider. We voted him out of the club." "He's not going to take that well," Carl said. "Rick's got pride, too much of it." "I don't care about his pride," Tom said. "He crossed a line, but Sarah, you need to know. He's not done. He's talking to anyone who'll listen, telling them you're a fraud. Some people are believing him." Sarah felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. "So what do we do?" "We go to the rally," Tom said firmly. "We show everyone the bike. We let the proof speak for itself. And we do it together as a club with you as an honorary member." "I'm not a biker," Sarah protested. "No, but you're Danny Mitchell's daughter and you've earned your place. If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." The other riders nodded in agreement. For the first time since she'd come home to Copper Falls, Sarah felt like she truly belonged somewhere. The rally was held at the county fairgrounds, a sprawling area filled with hundreds of motorcycles, vendors, and spectators. Sarah arrived early with Tom and the Iron Riders, the knucklehead loaded carefully in a trailer. The atmosphere was electric. Bikers from all over Montana had come to show off their rides, compete in contests, and celebrate motorcycle culture. The Iron Riders' booth was positioned prominently near the main stage. As they unloaded the knucklehead, Sarah noticed a crowd forming. Word had spread fast. People wanted to see the bike that supposedly ran on water. And there, at the edge of the crowd, stood Rick Porter. He wasn't wearing his Iron Rider's vest anymore, but he'd brought friends. At least a dozen men stood with him, including several Devil's Creek hounds. Tom saw them too. "Stay close to the booth," he told Sarah. "This might get ugly." For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Tom gave demonstrations, starting the knucklehead and letting it run while explaining the water hybrid system. Sarah fielded technical questions, showing people her father's designs and her own calculations. The crowd's reaction was mostly positive, though plenty of skeptics remained. Then Rick made his move. He pushed through the crowd, a video camera in his hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out loudly, "you're being scammed. This bike doesn't run on water. It's a parlor trick and I can prove it." The crowd went silent. Tom stepped forward. "Rick, you need to leave." "I'm not going anywhere. This is a public event and the public deserves the truth." Rick turned to the crowd. "I used to be an Iron Rider. I know these guys. Tom Garrett is a good man, but he's being fooled by this woman. She's not a mechanic. She's a con artist." Sarah felt every eye turn to her. This was it, the moment Rick had been building toward. He was going to try to destroy her credibility in the most public way possible. "That's a lie," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the fairgrounds. "Everything I've told you about this bike is true." "Then prove it," Rick challenged. "Right now in front of everyone. Drain the fuel tank completely. Then fill the water tank and start the bike. If it runs on water like you claim, it should work right." The crowd murmured. It was a clever trap. The bike didn't run on water alone, only on a hybrid system that required both water and gasoline. But if Sarah tried to explain that now, it would sound like backtracking. "The system requires both water and gasoline," Sarah explained calmly. "It's a hybrid. The water is converted to hydrogen, which supplements the fuel." "Convenient," Rick sneered. "So you're admitting it can't run on just water?" "I never claimed it could. I said it runs on water and gasoline together." "That's not what Tom's been telling people. He said this bike runs on water. Are you calling Tom a liar?" Tom's face flushed with anger. "I never said it runs on water alone, Rick. Don't put words in my mouth." But the damage was done. Sarah could see doubt spreading through the crowd. Rick had planted seeds of confusion, and people were starting to question everything. One of the Devil's Creek hounds spoke up. "Sounds to me like the Iron Riders are full of it, making claims they can't back up." "The only person full of it is Rick," Carl shot back. "He's just bitter because we kicked him out." The hound stepped forward. "You want to say that again, old man?" Tom moved between them. "Everyone calm down, this isn't." "Get out of my way," the hound said, shoving Tom. That's when everything exploded. Carl threw a punch at the hound. Other Iron Riders jumped in. The hounds fought back. Within seconds, a full brawl erupted around the booth, with spectators scattering and rally security rushing in. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, watching the chaos unfold. This was exactly what Rick had wanted. The fight would overshadow everything, and the bike would be forgotten in the violence. No, she wouldn't let that happen. Sarah climbed onto the knucklehead and hit the start button. The engine roared to life, cutting through the noise of the fight. She revved it hard, the sound so loud it echoed across the fairgrounds. Everyone stopped and turned to look at her. Sarah sat on the bike, the engine running smooth and powerful beneath her. "You want proof?" she shouted. "Here's your proof. This bike is running right now on quarter tank of gas and a full water tank. It's been running for 5 minutes straight. Any normal Harley would have burned through more fuel by now, but look at the gauge. The fuel level hasn't moved." She pointed to the water tank. "And the water level is dropping because the system is working. Hydrogen is being extracted and fed into the engine. This is real. This is science. And this is my father's legacy." Rick pushed through the crowd. "You could have rigged that gauge. This proves nothing." "Then test it yourself," Sarah said. She climbed off the bike and pulled out a fuel testing kit from her toolbox. "Here, drain the tank and measure how much fuel is in there. Then we'll ride the bike for an hour and measure again. The math doesn't lie, Rick, and neither do I." Rick stared at the testing kit, trapped. If he refused, he'd look like a coward. If he tested it and the numbers proved Sarah right, he'd be humiliated. Before he could respond, an elderly man in riding leathers pushed to the front of the crowd. Sarah recognized him from photos in her father's shop. This was William "Bull" Morrison, a legend in Montana motorcycle circles and a former Iron Rider who'd moved away years ago. "Danny Mitchell was my best friend for 40 years, Bull said, his voice carrying authority. "He told me about this project before he died, made me promise not to say anything until it was finished. He said his daughter Sarah was the only person smart enough to complete it." Bull looked directly at Sarah. "Danny showed me the plans. I didn't understand half of it, but I believed in him. And looking at this bike now, seeing it run, I believe in you too, kid." He turned to Rick. "You're making a fool of yourself, son. Danny was twice the mechanic you'll ever be, and his daughter's got his talent plus an education you couldn't dream of. This bike is real. Accept it." The crowd's mood shifted. Bull Morrison's word carried weight that Rick's accusations couldn't overcome. Rick looked around, realizing he'd lost. The hounds had backed off, security was breaking up the fights, and the crowd was now on Sarah's side. "This isn't over," Rick muttered, but he slunk away, his friends following. Tom walked over to Sarah, nursing a bruised knuckle. "You okay?" "I'm fine, you." "Been in worse fights," he smiled. "That was quick thinking, starting the bike like that." "Learned it in the army. When things go sideways, take control of the situation however you can." Bull Morrison approached them, extending his hand to Sarah. "Your father talked about you constantly. Said you were going to change the world someday. I think he might have been right." Sarah shook his hand, feeling tears threaten. "Thank you for speaking up. Couldn't let that punk dishonor Danny's memory. Besides, the truth needed to be told." Bull examined the knucklehead closely. "Your old man was working on this for 15 years. Never could quite get it right, but he always said you'd be the one to finish it. Guess he knew what he was talking about." For the rest of the rally, Sarah answered questions, gave demonstrations, and let people examine the water hybrid system up close. Engineers and mechanics studied the design with admiration. Several manufacturers asked for her contact information, interested in licensing the technology. By the end of the day, the knucklehead had won Best in Show, and Sarah had received offers from 3 major motorcycle companies to develop the system for mass production. As the sun set over the fairgrounds, Tom and the Iron Riders gathered around Sarah. "Your father would be proud," Tom said simply. "And so are we. You're one of us now, Sarah, an Iron Rider in spirit if not in leather." Carl handed her a package wrapped in brown paper. "We had this made for you. Figured you earned it." Sarah unwrapped it to find a leather vest with a patch that read "Honorary Iron Rider" and underneath, "Mitchell's Custom Cycles, where the impossible takes a little longer." She put it on, feeling the weight of it, the meaning. This wasn't just acceptance, this was respect. A week later, Sarah reopened Mitchell's Custom Cycles with a new sign out front. "Mitchell's Custom Cycles, now featuring water hybrid technology." The shop was busier than it had been in years. Orders poured in for custom builds and hybrid conversions. Sarah hired 2 assistants to help with the workload. Rick Porter had left Copper Falls entirely, reportedly moving to Idaho. Nobody seemed to miss him. One evening, as Sarah was closing up, Emma stopped by with dinner. "Saw the article about you in the motorcycle magazine," Emma said. "They're calling you a revolutionary. Your father would love that." Sarah smiled, looking at the photo of her father that hung on the shop wall. In it, he was standing next to a Harley, his hands covered in grease, grinning at the camera. "I think he knew this would happen," Sarah said. "I think he knew I'd come home, finish his work, and keep this place alive. He planned it all along." "Smart man, your father." "The smartest." Sarah touched the photo gently. "I used to think I had to prove myself to everyone else, but really I just had to prove it to myself, that I could follow in his footsteps and make him proud." "You did more than that," Emma said. "You forged your own path. You took his dream and made it real. That's not following in someone's footsteps. That's creating your own legacy." Sarah looked around the shop at the tools and parts, at the bikes waiting for repair, at the future she was building. Emma was right. This wasn't just her father's legacy anymore. It was hers too. And she was just getting started. The knucklehead sat in the corner, polished and perfect, a symbol of everything she'd overcome and everything she'd achieved. It had run on water and gasoline, on determination and skill, on her father's genius and her own strength. But most of all, it had run on the simple truth that impossible just takes a little longer. And Sarah Mitchell had all the time in the world.